controversial, but the Browns' final preseason game versus the Rams, and with Kenny Pickett having played no preseason games for the Browns, and the Browns naming Joe Flacco as the starter, I think it's time for the Browns to trade Kenny Pickett. And I got a good landing spot for Kenny Pickett. I think not a lot of people are discussing it, and I will discuss that with my man, sports writer extraordinaire, Wilton Jackson, who joins the show. All this and more here on the other side on Bailey Price Media Live. What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome back to another edition of Bailey Price Media Live. If you're watching and tuning in, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and become a member of the Bailey Price Media Army today. If you're just coming over from 0 to 60 with Matt McChesney and I, we had a great show talking all things Colorado Buffaloes football, NFL news, and more. New York Jets with him as he played for the Jets. We got a very special show for you today, talking all things Cleveland Browns football and Cleveland Browns quarterback situation here, as Kenny Pickett will not be playing in the Browns' final preseason game against the Rams. And I think this is, I don't know if it's significant news, but I think it's time for the Browns to trade Kenny Pickett. I think there's a good landing spot that I'm going to discuss with my main man, Wilton Jackson, who's joining the show here in a sec. We'll wait for him to get his camera and stuff ready to go, but I'm really excited to have him on the show, get his perspective on the Browns quarterback situation, as well as college football news, because, folks, we are days, and really tonight there's a lot of football that kicks off in other levels of college football, but we are the college football season is here, folks, and I'm really, really excited to discuss that and break that down here. I have a lot of previews, predictions, and we've been waiting. It's been a long off season. It's been a long 7 months here of the off season, and man, I am really happy that football's back. But without further ado, we got a special guest joining the show, and it's an honor to have this main man join the show. Sports writing extraordinaire. You can find his stuff everywhere. I mean, he does a hell of a job covering all things. He doesn't just cover football. You see him covering WNBA, basketball. He does it all. Shout out to him. My main man, Wilton Jackson, joins the show. Wilton, happy Thursday, man. Thank you for joining. How you doing, man?
I am doing good. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, my man. I can't thank you enough for joining. Lots to discuss here. Football is here. The season's here. It's been a long off season of just, discussing, debating, and really predicting the season. But we're finally here, and I got to get your perspective on the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation. As I think it's time for the Browns to do something with Kenny Pickett here, trade him or whatever. But Kenny Pickett sitting out of the Browns will not play in the Browns' final preseason game against the Rams due to his hamstring injury. He's had some reps in practice, but he's not going to be suiting up for they're calling it a dress rehearsal, so to speak, in the Browns' final preseason game. What are your thoughts on the Browns' quarterback situation as a whole, starting with Shedeur Sanders, et cetera? I want to get your perspective on it. What do you think?
I know that they've named Joe Flacco the starter. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan. I understand why, because you're coming into a new season. You're dealing with a bunch of rookie quarterbacks, and that's understandable. If you're Coach Kevin Stefanski, you want to go with someone that's a little bit more seasoned and has more experience. But I think that what you've seen in Shedeur Sanders, like, granted, obviously he's dealing with the oblique injury. He's going to still be able to get some playing time on Saturday in the final game. But what we saw from him against Carolina, I think that we see that with continued growth and experience, the more times he gets reps, I think you're talking about a Shedeur Sanders as a quarterback that's really going to be prepared to play in the league. Now, granted, I had to tell some other people this in several other conversations. Granted, it was a preseason game. He wasn't necessarily playing against the players he's going to be playing, once the regular season starts. But you're talking about someone who made good reads, made good decisions. It wasn't perfect, of course, but you almost have to consider giving him a chance. And when you start talking about Dylan Gabriel, not a bad quarterback as another second option as well. And I've heard so much discussion like, well, especially more so on Twitter, you hear people talking about, Dylan Gabriel, he's nothing compared to Shedeur Sanders. Like this dude, like let's not forget what he did in college, right?
Yeah.
Like he's not a slouch at all. It just so happens to be that he's behind a guy by the name of Shedeur Sanders. That's what it really comes down to. And so I think that the safe bet, if you're Coach Kevin Stefanski right now, is to go with Joe Flacco because he has the experience. But I'm hoping that Shedeur gets the start at some point during the season.
I think it's good. I think it's Shedor's been saying, his Nike ad, whatnot. It's only a matter of time. I think it's definitely the right call to start Flacco. I think starting experience is going to be great. I thought Shedeur having an experienced leader, somebody who had been there and done that, like Joe Flacco, has been there, won a Super Bowl, was a Super Bowl MVP. People forget. People don't write Joe Flacco off because he's 40 and whatnot. He's been there and done that. So I think I understand also Joe Flacco doesn't want to be like mentoring, so to speak. I think it's more of a lead by example situation with Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel for that perspective. With Dylan Gabriel coming in the scene here, I think it's they're going to roll with him first. If Joe Flacco struggles, they're going to put Dylan Gabriel in first just because they drafted him first. And I was a big, Dylan Gabriel guy in college. He's bounced around, played a lot of football. He's broken. I think he has the FBS record for passing yards or passing touchdowns, I believe. And I get that. I just think that Shedeur is going to find his way onto the field eventually because I think Dylan Gabriel could struggle, especially if he has to play early in the Browns' first 6 games, which their schedule is a gauntlet early. So that's something to watch in the Browns quarterback situation. Now, as we look this Saturday, I want to get your thoughts on what to expect really in the Browns final preseason game here. Joe Flacco will play about 25 plays. Then we'll get to see a little bit of Gabriel, a little bit of Shedeur, and really it's a dress rehearsal here, kind of the last preseason game. So I don't know if there's too much to look ahead to. But what do you expect on Saturday here for the Browns final preseason match before we get into some college football talk?
So when I hear dress rehearsal, I feel like each one of these quarterbacks are going to obviously do their best to have their best performance in the limited time that they have on the field. But that also tells me decisions have already been made. And at the end of the day, when week 1 hits, Joe Flacco will be under center as the starter. However, if your name is Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, could potentially be deciding or determining, okay, who's going to come in at second just in case if something was to happen to Joe Flacco. Who's going to be behind Flacco or who's going to be third string. So if you're Gabriel or you're Sanders, you're trying to have your best football in this particular game, albeit that it's a dress rehearsal. You want to make sure you end on a high note because obviously, with coaches, you're trying to impress them and, get a spot on the team. But then also, with the Cleveland Browns, just like I know, the chatter will begin even more after this final game on Saturday. So you want to make sure that you're playing your best ball. And I think both of them are going to have their best games on Saturday.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited to see how both of them play in just the similar setting here. I don't know how many starters will be out with them at that point. It's going to be kind of interesting to see who they play with and how they respond. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. But I think ultimately going back to Kenny Pickett and then Huntley, who I interviewed Mary Kay Cabot, she indicated he's more of like a camp body to fill in for injuries, not to put it lightly. But I expect him to be. I expect them to move on from him. I just don't see them rostering 4 quarterbacks. Kevin Stefanski's been pretty open about that as well. So something to watch here on Saturday. But really, I gotta get your perspective on college football here because season's here. Wilton, I gotta ask you about your school, LSU here. What do you think about their opening matchup against Clemson? And then what are your expectations for LSU football in 2025?
I had a conversation with someone. So I like to run. I'm a part of a run club. And literally after this run club yesterday, we were talking about this and specifically this game. Yeah. I am looking for LSU to take that next step. There were so many games last year that they were in and they were supposed to win. And they obviously didn't get those wins because they ended up in like really, really close losses. I think this is an LSU team that should and can potentially get over the hump this year. You're talking about an SEC, but, and I say that, but you're talking about an SEC that's going to be really, really competitive. Obviously, once again, you'll have Georgia that's going to be in contention. You have an Alabama team that's not happy with what happened to them last season as well. And so you start thinking about, even Texas, Arch Manning, like they are the front runners of the teams in the SEC to win the SEC and, potential national championship contenders. So it's not going to be an easy process. And you're also talking about an LSU team that's battling a really, really, if not the most experienced Clemson football team or the most experienced college football team this season with Cade Klubnik and the defense that Clemson has. And shout out to head coach. He actually went in the portal and got more players this time, or got in the portal and got some other players this time. So it should be a very interesting game. But I do think that LSU is I'm gonna put my confidence in LSU in getting this win.
For sure. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the battle in the trenches. I'm curious to see how LSU's offensive line responds to Clemson's defensive line, because I would, if I was an LSU fan, I'd be a little concerned considering the losses on the offensive line, and then Clemson is loaded as always on the defensive line. But I think it's going to be one of many great games in the first week. What do you think about Clemson going into this year? I think by far the front runners in the ACC, and what I think is a pretty wide open conference. We'll see how Miami is, having Carson Beck at quarterback. Obviously, Bill Belichick and the Tar Heels having brought in 60+ transfers. I'm excited to see them as well. Several other teams in the ACC. But what are your expectations for Clemson going into this year as well?
As eloquent as you just said that in terms of the ACC being wide open, it really is. But I think also in that same sentence, believe it or not, this is a conference that for Clemson to lose. You have the most experience, literally one of the most experienced teams in college football this year. You have a quarterback that has grown over the years, and I'm hoping and putting it out there that Cade Klubnik is going to take that next step that he needs to take for this team to go, because they're only going to go as far as he goes. We know that, especially, Clemson is a team that's very much quarterback-led driven. So he's going to have to have a phenomenal season starting off from the jump to determine how far that they go. But I think after Clemson, you have to look at, again, Bill Belichick in North Carolina. I am very intrigued. I don't know what's going to happen, but anytime I hear Bill Belichick in football, I think of wins and I think of championships. That's just my personal opinion. So I know they'll be in the mix. I'm not fully sold on Miami yet. I don't have them out of the mix, but I do think that today, on August 21st, I think this is still Clemson's conference to win.
For sure. I'm excited to see the Tar Heels. It's certainly exciting to have Belichick coaching, certainly in college, in this landscape of college football with the transfer portal, NIL, the way it is. They have a transfer quarterback named Gio Lopez coming from South Alabama, competing with Max Johnson, returning from a really gruesome leg injury. He's the son of Brad Johnson. I'm excited to see them. Miami, you mentioned Carson Beck. I have talked about them extensively, and I will continue to on this show. And I got to see it to believe. They have a tough matchup week one. It's all about, can they stop the run? Can they stop Jeremiah Love? I'm curious to see how Carson Beck looks in that offense. I think that offense in general lost a lot. Lost running back Damian Martinez, that I think can come late in the year, kind of a safety blanket for Cam Ward. So it's interesting to see how Miami looks as well. But like you mentioned, I agree. Clemson, I think it's definitely their conference to take over. Now, I want to go over to the Big 12 here. I want to ask you about Coach Prime after Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. I do a show with Colorado Matt McChesney. I talk about this all day. Colorado is a wild, tough, I think really tough matchup opening against Haynes King and Georgia Tech. Brent Key certainly got a hell of a team, especially people, I think Colorado fans, but people, Twitter, etc., are counting out Georgia Tech and acting like Colorado is just going to run all over them. When Georgia Tech and Georgia, I don't know if people watched that game last year. That was they went to the wire with them, definitely. What are your expectations for CU in 2025? And then talk about Georgia Tech a little bit as well.
I think more so people have to now really, really, truly turn the page on Shedeur and what he was able to do with this program. And I think I would like to think that they have. And so now it's a new chapter starting for Coach Prime at Colorado. I think they're going to have a talented team. You're talking about a coach in Coach Prime that I got a chance to watch him up close in person when he was coaching at Jackson State. After that first championship year, obviously Shedeur remained the quarterback, but after that first championship year, there were players that left, and then there were other players that came in. And so one thing I can say about him is that he's one that can market himself. We know what Coach Prime can do, and players want to play for him. So the players that step out on that field for that game, they better be ready to play though. They're going to be they're great players, just like Georgia Tech has great players, but this is not going to be a pushover. Georgia Tech is a team that really shook up some things last year. Didn't necessarily have the perfect season, but definitely made things interesting last year in the ACC. So I'm looking for Georgia Tech to build on that this season coming in, because you got a chance to see their offense flow. You got a chance to see that continuity being built. And again, with a different Colorado team coming in, although this game is in Colorado, you can be willing. I'm willing to bet you that this Georgia Tech team will be prepared to play when they step on the field against Colorado.
Georgia Tech's coming to punch Colorado in the mouth, especially the way they came and their last season ended. I think with Colorado going into this year, their success really is prevalent on one thing, whether they run the football or not. I think there's a reason they brought in Marshall Faulk as their running back coach and run game coordinator. They have Andre Gerard as the offensive line coach there, along with George Hageman, who's an NFL veteran as well, and Gunnar White, who's been there since with Prime since Jackson State. And I'm really excited to see how Colorado's offensive line looks. I mean, Jordan Seaton looks like an absolute freak, who their star left tackle that had an unbelievable season as a true freshman last year. I think it's prevalent on Colorado running the ball. Defensively, Colorado, I think they're going to just pick up where they left off last year. I think we really saw a jump in Colorado defensively thanks to the defensive coordinator, Robert Livingston. I'm excited to see how they respond against Haynes King, Jamal Hayes, and that running game over at Georgia Tech, because that's going to be a hell of a game.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, Wilt, about the SEC. Who's your dark horse in the SEC, and then who's your favorite? What are your thoughts on the SEC football going into 2025? I've been talking a lot of SEC on this show this week.
So I have to say this, and I hope I don't put my hand in my mouth after saying this. I want to see Texas do it. Like I want to see Texas, remain at the top. I want to see Arch Manning have his breakout time, his breakout moments after, obviously basically being in the shadows of Quinn Ewers last season. So I'm ready for Texas to take that step. Honestly, because it's so deep, believe it or not, my dark horse literally is somewhere between LSU and don't sleep on South Carolina. This is a team that people might have thought, like, especially more so last year. They won some games that most people thought they wouldn't win. Clearly, I think they're not going to be they're not going to surprise anyone this season. Also, keep an eye on Vanderbilt and what they're able to do.
Hey, Wilton, you're talking my language, because I've talked about Vandy extensively on this show, because I live in Knoxville. I'm out in Tennessee. I see it all. And then South Carolina, Lenora Sellers, Shane Beamer's building a monster. And they have, I know they lost some stars, but I think they're key players, getting the running back and Sellers, obviously, certain key players on the defensive side as well. I think it's going to be huge for them. I'm excited. And I've broken down their schedule. Their win total is 7.5. I think people are undervaluing them like crazy. Same with Vanderbilt. People think Vanderbilt's just going to be what they've been for the last 10 years or so. I don't agree with that either. I'm excited to see Clark Lee, I think, is a great coach there, getting Diego Pavia for one final year. I think they're going to really piss some people off in the SEC for sure. Going to Texas. Sorry, go ahead. What you were going to say, something?
No, I was just about to say something, but count on drama in the SEC every year.
Yes, and I think the SEC, I interviewed Joe Klatt about a year ago before last season. He talked about the Big 12 cannibalizing itself and just everyone beating each other up, and essentially they did. I see it with the SEC this season. It's going to be interesting who comes out on top with Texas and Arch Manning. My favorite thing about Arch Manning, you kind of brought it up, him sitting behind Quinn Ewers. Typically, with players that's, in this era of college football, instead of sitting behind and developing in a certain system and not starting, they go and transfer and start right away. And we didn't see that from Arch Manning. So I think we're really going to see the benefits of that and him developing a Sark system, learning from Quinn Ewers, pay dividends this season. I'm really excited to see it. Man, my final question for you, Wilton. I can't thank you enough for joining, my man. I got to ask you about the Titans here. Again, I'm in Tennessee. I'm a big Titans fan covering them. I'm a big Cam Ward guy. What are your expectations for the Titans and Cam Ward starting as a rookie here? Kind of a tough situation for Tennessee.
It is a tough situation. I'm glad you kind of led into it with that. I'm excited to see what Cam Ward can do. I think more than anything, it's going to be, he's going to go as far as the Titans offensive line. and what they're able to do to protect him. Because here's the thing: what we know is when he has protection and he can sit in the pocket and or move, he can get the ball to his receivers. I think more so than anything, as long as the Titans' offensive line can show that they can block consistently, not for a quarter, not for 2 quarters, not for a couple plays, but consistently, I think they're going to be okay. And I think that having some type of consistent running game, anytime you have a rookie quarterback or or a first year quarterback coming into a franchise or anything like that, the best thing that they can have is at least a somewhat of a consistent running game. And I think if you're someone like Cam Ward, you coming from a Miami system, you had a running game to kind of help you there. But with the Titans, if he can have some consistent running game with the Titans, I think it's going to help him, relax a little bit more and feel more comfortable with the Titans in this system.
I think you make a great point, and I brought this up going into last year with the Titans. I thought they had a pretty decent, for the most part, offensive line and run game with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Their offensive line coach is the son of Brian Callahan, who's the head coach. His name is Bill Callahan. I think he's one of the best coaches in offense in the NFL. Really, him and Statland over in Philly. But really, I really like what they've done with the offensive line. They got J.C. Latham, who they developed, moved him over to right tackle. So I'm excited to see how he develops there. Got 2 good running backs and Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears that I think could take the pressure off of Cam Ward. I just think he is not being talked about at all. He is the least talked about number 1 pick ever. And so I think him going under the radar, not having that pressure, I think it's going to help him.
Yeah, and you know why? I mean, like the headlines have been dominated by Shedeur Sanders.
Yes.
Literally.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, literally. I mean, that you walk every time I walk in the gym, every time you look at ESPN, it's Shedeur Sanders, and that's fine. I think it's going to pay off for Cam Ward, and I don't know. People are talking about the Titans wide receiver core is not great. Cam Ward responded. He's like, no, they're top 5. Cam Ward in Titans training camp here the other day threw a touchdown pass and got into a fight with Jeffrey Simmons and then the whole team. And I'm like, I'm with it, man. I'm with this shit. I love what I'm hearing out of Nashville. That's all I got to say.
That means they're locked in and they're ready to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wilton, I can't thank you enough for joining, my man. I love getting your perspective on the Browns quarterback situation, LSU, and Cam Ward and the Titans, brother. I can't thank you enough for joining. We'd love to have you guys have you on again, and thank you so much, brother.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for having me on, and anytime you want to have me on, I'm always glad to be back.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much for joining. Shout out to you, my man. Shout out to the main man, Wilton Jackson, for joining the show. I can't thank him enough for joining, getting his perspective on the Browns quarterback situation. That game is on Saturday. There's college football. I mean, think about it. You open up with K-State, Iowa State, and Shedeur's playing an hour after, and there's games the whole day. I can't wait for the weekend of college football ahead, NFL football ahead as well. But shout out to Wilton for joining the show, getting his perspective on the LSU Tigers as well. He's high on LSU, higher than I am for sure, and I think he's certainly optimistic. I think they may be in trouble against Clemson in Week 1. We'll wait to see how that plays out. Week 1 has got some wild matchups. We've talked about it on the show. We'll talk about it tomorrow on College Football Preview with Alcorn State. Coach Leroy Frederick joins the show tomorrow for College Football Preview. We're going to preview all the games throughout this weekend here, discuss what we think, give our predictions and stuff. So stay tuned for that tomorrow. Man, I can't wait to have Coach Fred and get his perspective on all things college football. Shedeur Sanders. We haven't had Coach Fred on in a week. Can't wait to get his reactions and stuff because I know Coach Fred's going to come and give his perspective, and I can't wait to get his perspective on that. If you were coming over from 0 to 60 with Matt McChesney and I, we had a wild show, and I'm going to tell you right now, based on some news that I just see coming out, it's going to be a wild show tomorrow. So tune in to 0 to 60 with Matt McChesney and I tomorrow. It's going to be a wild one. All things Colorado Buffaloes football and some crazy NFL shit that I'm seeing. Oh, boy. So tune into that tomorrow. But we'll be live here tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific with Alcorn State Coach Leroy Frederick talking all things college football previewing the weekend of college football ahead. Shout out to everybody for tuning in. Shout out to Eric and everybody else in the chat, Dak Holiday, Shirley Kimball. Shout out to you guys for tuning in. Shout out to you guys for letting your voice be heard in the chat. I can't thank you all enough for tuning in, and tune in tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for college football preview with Alcorn State Coach Leroy Frederick. Enjoy your Thursday, folks. Thanks for watching. Peace.